We had a deer fall through the ice, and just his top of his head was sticking out. So he came and ate the brain.
You're kidding.
I didn't even know they had a show like that till you started talking about it this morning. Yeah.
That's gross.
Okay, we're ready to go. We're going to call our meeting to order. Let the minutes reflect. All members are present. And we'll go to setting the agenda. Anything different or new on the agenda today?
Yes, President Preiner, staff would like to amend the agenda for new item 2 under items requiring board action. That would be the ACD 5362 Circle Pines right of entry acknowledgement and agreement.
Okay. Anything else?
Yes.
Anybody else like to add, subtract? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
I move approval of the agenda, Madam Chair.
As amended.
As
Second.
amended, yep.
Second.
We have a motion and a second as amended. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Approval of the minutes?
Madam Chair, I move approval of the March 7th, 2022 Rice Creek Watershed District Workshop.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye. Madam Chair, I move approval of the March 9th, 2022 regular meeting of the Rice Creek Watershed Board of Managers.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye. And Madam Chair, I move approval of the March 9th, 2022 public hearing petition for partial transfer of management authority for Anoka, Washington Judicial Ditch 4 to the City of Forest Lake.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Next thing is the consent agenda.
Yes, President Preiner, Board of Managers. On the consent agenda today, staff have 3 applications. Afterwards, we also have an application separate requiring board action, including a variance. I will note, I believe that George Abernathy with Sambatech is here related to application 22010. If he'd like to make a comment. And I guess I'd also like to just point out a piece from the application 21136, the City of Forest Lake Water Treatment Plant. Just wanted to make it clear that this site is using the Forest Lake High School School District water reuse facility for their BMP treatment.
Okay. Any questions on the consent agenda? Mr. Abernathy wanted to make a comment?
Yeah, no comment for me.
Okay.
I don't know if my microphone's even working. Sorry.
All right. Very good. Okay, we'll need a motion.
Madam President, I move to cap rock permit number 21-136, 22-010, and 22-011.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, permit applications required board action. This is for a variance request. Patrick?
Sorry about that. Yes, this is application 2177. This was previously reviewed and approved administratively for a home build, and now they've come back for a tear down and rebuild of a garage and have requested a variance. So typical procedure, I guess we'll have Chris kind of do the intro on the variance, and then we'll run through the evaluation of criteria.
Sure. Madam President, Board of Managers, as Patrick indicated, the project applicant, and sorry if I mispronounced this, Sanjeev Arora, he submitted a request for a variance from Rice Creek Watershed District under Rule E3G, which requires a structure to be built within the 100-year floodplain to maintain a minimum of 2 feet of freeboard between the lowest floor and the 100-year elevation. And we evaluated the request per District Rule L for an amendment to permit 21-077, and the variance request is an attachment in your packet. Again, that permit 21077 was previously issued for a development on the parcel, which is a little over an acre, located at 5486 Lake Avenue in Shoreview. Applicant was at that time approved for construction of a new home and a driveway that increased the impervious surface area in the site from just about 0 to 0.17 acres. The permit amendment that they have is proposing to remove an existing garage on the site that's approximately 22 by 36 feet and replace it with a new 22 by 26 structure. That detached garage is proposed at an elevation of 890.0, which is approximately 0.2 feet above the existing garage elevation, but it is 1.3 feet below the 100-year flood elevation, which is 891.3. As I mentioned before, District Rule E3G requires 2 feet of freeboard above that 100-year elevation. So in aggregate, they're not meeting the requirement by approximately 3.3 feet. The applicant has requested a variance from the Rule the E3G freeboard requirement, and the proposed application otherwise is compliant with all other Rice Creek rules. Just noting the way the drainage on the site flows, the northern part of the site drains to the north and west under Lexington Avenue and over to Ramsey County Ditch 1 before ultimately discharging to Long Lake, which is the resource of concern. Southern portion of the site drains south to Turtle Lake. The site is hydraulically connected to the floodplain downstream of Turtle Lake. And that has, again, a regulatory flood elevation of 891.3.
Excellent. Thanks, Chris. Okay, so we'll run through the criteria. Criterion A, how substantial the variation is in relation to district rule requirements.
As I mentioned before, the applicant is proposing to construct that garage at an elevation that is 0.2 feet above the existing garage elevation, but 1.3 feet below the regulatory flood elevation. District Rule E3G requires 2 feet of freeboard. That'll be it.
Sure. Criterion B, the effect the variance would have on government services.
The variance is not expected to increase the cost or difficulty of providing government services. The City of Shoreview has already reviewed and issued a conditional use permit for this project, which does not allow the structure to be used for any business purposes.
Criterion C, whether the variance will affect a substantial change in the character of the watershed resources or will be a substantial detriment to neighboring properties.
As always, we consider 3 different criteria, the first of which is water quality, which is defined as the quantity of pollutants such as phosphorus and suspended sediment leaving the site and potential to degrade water quality downstream. Second criteria being the presence and potential to special and impaired water bodies as defined by various laws, including the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency Stormwater Program, whether a water body is impaired or related designations, including the wild or scenic outstanding natural resource value designations, and the third criteria being flooding, the potential for flood damages or other adverse impacts. The project is proposing a total fill of 93.4 cubic yards within the floodplain, and 6.2 cubic yards of the total fill is related to the construction of the garage. So the remainder was already completed as part of the prior permit. That total fill of 93.4 cubic yards is less than the 100 cubic yard exemption under the Rice Creek rule, and thus compensatory storage is not required under Rule E. Non-compliance with the freeboard requirement is not expected to affect the above mentioned water resource criteria. The project is already currently compliant with all of the district rules except Rule E3G. Whether the variance will have a negative effect on neighboring properties, we consider whether the variance will cause or contribute to a change in 100-year floodplain elevation, increase the frequency or magnitude of flood damages, or increase hardship downstream from peak flow or flood duration. Non-compliance with that freeboard requirement is not expected to have a negative effect on neighboring properties or adversely affect the 100-year floodplain elevation.
Criterion D, whether the practical difficulty can be alleviated by a feasible method other than a variance.
The plan proposed is to use helical piers. They're basically almost like oversized auger bits that are drilled into the ground to support the garage due to the soft soils that are in the area. A total of 6.2 cubic yards of floodplain fill is required to raise the garage elevation that 0.2 feet above the existing grade that I had mentioned previously. The proposed plan seeks to minimize the amount of fill in the floodplain, which the applicant has indicated that the city of Shoreview has expressed as a concern. One alternative design was considered to meet the freeboard requirements. The applicant explored a design to raise the garage elevation to 893.3, which would meet the freeboard requirement. However, raising the garage to that elevation would require the construction of a steep angled approach, which would cause difficulty in using the garage. Additionally, the fill required would put the applicant above the 100 cubic yard of floodplain fill, and thus require them to provide an equal amount of compensatory storage on the site. Due to the elevation of the property and adjacent floodplain, the majority of the property is below the regulatory 100-year flood elevation, which is based on a snowmelt event. As such, the applicant has indicated that it would be infeasible to provide the floodplain mitigation on the property. The district engineer concurs with the statement. As such, the applicant has raised the garage to the highest extent possible while keeping the floodplain impacts to the minimum and below the mitigation threshold. By requesting the variance on the freeboard requirement, the applicant has assumed the risk on their own structure rather than a potential risk to their neighbors due to increase in fill. The applicant acknowledges the risk associated with not meeting the freeboard requirement.
Criterion E, how the practical difficulty occurred, including whether the landowner created the need for the variance.
The district engineer finds that the current landowner did not create the circumstances which hinder the ability to build the garage above the floodplain elevation. The need for a variance is created by applicant's desire to place a new garage on the property, replacing the existing one, and the applicant is unable to do so without impacting available volume in the floodplain. Per our discussion above, the applicant has indicated the proposed design is the most desirable and is willing to accept that increase in potential flooding risk, that increase being compared to having it or meeting the freeboard requirement. Compared to existing condition, they are not increasing the potential risk of flooding, but actually are decreasing that risk by 0.2 feet.
Okay. And lastly, criterion F, whether in light of all the above factors, allowing the variance will serve the interests of justice.
As always, this criterion lies largely in the board's domain as it involves judgment of a non-technical nature. When reviewing this, one criterion we use for assessing the portion of practical difficulty standard is the ability or inability of other permit applicants with similar site conditions to comply with the district's freeboard requirements for Rule E3G. Here it's key to note that a variance was issued under permit 19-086 on a neighboring property for a similar issue, thus indicating that the issue is not unique to the applicant's parcel. Another consideration under this criterion is the relationship of the existing rule to the public interest. The intent of Rule E3G is not to protect downstream resources, but rather to decrease the risk of damage to the landowner's property. The applicant has demonstrated acceptance of the inherent flood risk. With this in mind, it's our recommendation that the applicant record on the property that the proposed garage was built with a freeboard 1.3 feet below the regulatory flood elevation and is thus non-compliant with the Rice Creek Watershed District freeboard requirement.
Okay.
Any questions?
Any questions for Patrick or Chris?
Madam President, just when you edited this whole thing on page 41, financial description line 1, project proposed to construct a new house, it still says attached. You might want to correct that for your final report. Detached garage.
I see detached, I'm sorry, I'm not quite following.
On the description, the project proposed to construct a new house, comma, attached garage, comma. The attached should be changed to detached.
I see what, yeah, I see it. Yep.
And for all the reasons you've indicated in your reports, I'm going to support this.
Madam Chair, for purpose of discussion, I would move approval to approve the variance request for variance application 21077 as outlined in accordance with the Rice Creek Watershed District Engineers Variance Technical Memorandum dated March 15th, 2022.
I'll second that.
Madam President,
We have a motion and a second.
I have
Okay.
a clarification here.
Go ahead.
So the description, the first sentence says, the project proposes to construct a new house and attached garage and a driveway on the 1.12 acre parcel adjacent. And then it goes on to say that now they've made a change from this. And so I don't know that changing that language about detached garage, that's what the change is. They now want to have a detached garage, as I understood. Or am I confused here, Patrick?
Two garages.
No.
It was already an existing structure
It's already-
that they're,
Right. And so what the original proposals changed then? And the original proposal was an attached garage, or?
there was an original application
Yeah.
that came through, yep, and then understanding that this was going to be a process they were going to have to go through, so they removed that portion from the project. The engineer's report is kind of to track that information, and now we're updating it for the variance application and their ultimate project plans.
Can I want to just make sure I understand too now, because the way I understood it, they had an attached garage and they were adding a detached. Did I misread that? I thought when they originally built, they had an attached garage on the house, but now they're adding a detached garage, right?
So they have two garages.
Two
Yeah.
garages.
That's the way I understood
Yeah.
it. Maybe I misread it.
President Preiner, perhaps the landowner could answer the question for us.
I'm trying to follow this as much as I can. I'll try and answer. So there was already a detached garage that is being, so the property didn't have any building. It only had the detached portion of the garage. And this request is to rebuild that detached garage. The new home that's going already has an attached garage.
So there's two. Okay. Thank you.
I hope I'm following.
Yep.
You're right.
Correct.
You're right.
Thank
Okay, so we have a motion and a second.
Yeah, Madam President, to address the concern that Manager Waller has raised, we could say the project initially proposed to construct a new house, attached garage, and then you come to the second sentence, and that's now proposing to demolish an existing detached. You could do it that way.
That makes sense to me. Thank you, sir.
you. Yes, sir.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second.
Yep.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That takes care of the variance, and now we're going to the permit application.
Madam Chair, I move approval of the permit 21-077 as outlined in the Rice Creek Watershed District Engineers Finding and Recommendations dated March 15th, 2022.
Second?
Motion and a second. Any further discussion?
I have some general questions about the process, and I can leave those after we complete this, if that
We
makes
can do
sense.
that. Yeah,
Okay.
let's finish the vote. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Go ahead with your question.
Okay, this has been very helpful to me because, first of all, I have driven by the site and I see it, and I've also I drive on. I often and see that there are a number of houses being built, or old houses torn down and new houses being built. So I see in the map that we have here that there are a lot of the property, at least the street-facing side of the property is under the floodplain, is in the floodplain. So a couple questions. Some of this I would imagine was grandfathered in. So as new construction is occurring, how much of the grandfathered in portion of the buildings, I guess the question would be, is do they have to apply for a brand new permit, or are some of the houses already in a grandfathered state, whether they're in the floodplain or not? Go ahead, Mike.
Yes, President Preiner, Manager Wine, what I would say is the understanding of the floodplain is an evolution of understanding as we get better and better information. So the shading on the map you referenced reflects what would happen in a 100-year event.
Mm-hmm.
You're right, some of the existing structures, as that develops or our understanding improves, may be now underwater. So that would be, underwater. An existing non-conforming structure. And we do promote to our communities our understanding of the floodplain so that they know these things and all that relationship building with the DNR and so on and so forth. At the time an applicant wants to, or a landowner wants to undertake a project, then they're now subject to the trigger points within our rules to come into compliance.
So I ask this knowing that we have a lot of lakeshore, and some of the understanding I've had is that if you don't change the footprint of an existing structure, then you are grandfathered in to be able to build on that.
Board of Managers, I would make a point of separating the jurisdictions. The district has numerous regulations, rules for permits. When those are triggered, they're triggered. The Land Use Authority and the FEMA administrator, the city, may have this grandfathering that you're referencing and allowance for no change in footprint in that, but that's not a part of the district's rule.
Okay, thank you. And then I had one more. We looked at our permit fees. So did this applicant have to pay additional fees to get the variance? What was the fee structure on this one?
Yeah, the original application would have come in before we did the updated fee schedule.
Okay.
And there wouldn't have been a new rule trigger with the variance application. They had already triggered the floodplain alteration rule. So I do not believe, and I can verify here real quick, I don't believe we collected an additional fee.
Okay, so it was the initial fee.
Yes, it was still under the old fee schedule. We didn't collect an additional fee. We did collect the variance fee, but that's a separate item.
Okay, I guess that's the question. So there was a permit fee and then there was a variance fee.
Correct.
Whatever it was at that time. Okay, thank you.
At this time, I just want to let the applicant know that the variance and the permit application were passed. So you're free to move on with that. Thank you. Okay.
Be okay for me to leave as you go through the business?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank
Yes.
you.
Okay. Okay, the next thing on the agenda is open mic. Anybody in the audience or online that are interested in open mic? I see a phone number there, but I don't know who's behind it. Is anybody interested in open mic at this time? Okay, well, seeing no comments right now, we're going to recess our regular meeting and go to the Anoka County, Washington Judicial Ditch 4 Findings and Order Grant. And let's see, we should be on page 652 of our packet. Tom, I believe?
Yes, Madam President, Board of Managers. At the hearing on the JD4 transfer, or after the public comment portion, Manager Bradley had asked for some clarification of language and the language change, the proposed findings in order. And the board by motion directed staff to make the requested changes to the findings in order and present them for consideration at today's meeting. So for your consideration is the revised findings in order.
Madam President, I'll note that staff kindly made the changes I had suggested and had shared with them before they brought them back.
And why don't you point out what the change was, if
Well, fortunately, they've underlined them.
Oh, where, okay.
So if you go to order,
got it.
large A, small a, you'll see we added that they shall pay to the district such costs.
Okay.
And then under C, it starts off with, though the present action does not result in any loss of drainage benefit, comma, the city shall compensate any owner or property benefited, et cetera.
Very good, thank you. Thanks for the change. So we can go with a motion on page 53, or,
Madam President, I would move resolution number 2022-07, which are the findings in order granting the petition, transferring a portion of Anoka, Washington Judicial Ditch 4 pursuant to Minnesota statutes section 103E.812 and adopting the conditions as set forth in the order.
I'll second that, Madam President.
we have a motion and a second.
Madam President, I just comment in the discussion period, as I mentioned during the hearing, when these actions take place, I'm going to vote for this so that people understand that. But there isn't a mechanism yet by which, basically, when you have a transfer of this authority, it doesn't transfer the dollars that are collected to help maintain the stormwater system. There's no rebate or reciprocity here in this, and so citizens that still have the city in charge of it are paying for less, the same amount of money, but less service from the district. And so in the future, that's something that needs to be corrected so that when you transfer the authority with it, you also transfer part of the tax dollar collection to maintain it.
Okay, go ahead. Let's take Chris.
Madam President, just to clarify on that with regard to the cost, the district uses the water management district mechanism to pay for capital costs related to maintaining the drainage system. For general maintenance of the drainage system, that would be put onto ad valorem. On any of these drainage systems, that water management district is based on the area that flows into the system. So regardless of whether that part of the system is transferred or not, the collection would be the same. And this would be on any drainage system that the district manages.
See, should I try to put that in English?
Sure.
So basically, what you're saying is that what we're avoiding is maintenance costs. Those maintenance costs are recovered through ad valorem. Therefore, if we don't have them, ad valorem goes down, there's benefit to everyone. Is that what you said?
Yes.
Thank you.
And I don't disagree with Manager Waller's thought, but I think in reality, when you're talking about tiny sections of a ditch and stuff like that, it seems to me like you could have more money in trying to keep track of it all than what would be changing hands. I don't know that for a fact, I'm just guessing, but it seems like it could be.
So, Madam President, thank you for the support. I'd point out to you that, yes, it does in little sections at a time, but, for example, Branch 1 has all been transferred. Now, this will be a good section of Branch 2. Pretty soon it adds up to large sections and pieces over time. And so that's the ad valorem taxes collected there, get to be a sizable amount of money. So, especially because this is all new construction at a higher value. And it's not the same as if it just stayed in farm fields or, in agriculture. But that's a problem for another day. I just wanted to point it out on the record here. And so I'm ready to vote, Madam President.
Madam President, just one last, I do recall that when we did it, Roseville asked specifically for 10 years of maintenance costs, and that was passed 4-1 with my objection. But so there has been at least one other instance when there was a significant amount of transfer with significant amount of anticipated new cost, that would be something we could evaluate on a case-by-case basis, I would think.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Manager Waller?
Yes.
Manager Winan?
Yes.
Manager Bradley?
Yes.
Manager Wegman?
Yes.
Manager Priner, yes. Motion passes. Okay, so now we're going to go back to our regular meeting, and I'll go back to open mic. Did the gentleman that just came in have anything you want to say during open mic? Because we already went past that part. No? Okay. All right, then we'll continue on to number 2. It was an addition. Nick? Or whoever is supposed to do it.
Yes, President Priner, this would be Tom Schmidt.
Oh, Tom's going to do it. Okay. Tom?
Yes, Madam President, Board of Managers, in preparation for the 5362, ACD 5362 repair project, staff has worked with the City of Circle Pines to secure an access and use agreement that will allow the district to utilize city-owned property adjacent to the ditch for access and spoil placement during the project. Staff have successfully worked with the city and are presenting the city signed agreement for your consideration. Staff recommends the board enter into the agreement as it will further our repair project efforts.
Okay. We need a motion and a second, so we can have discussion.
Madam President, I'll move that,
Would just be the handout.
yes, I misplaced it again. I found it here. Thank you. I'll move the right of entry acknowledgement and agreement with the City of Circle Pines.
Oh, there we go.
I'll second that.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion?
President Priner, I'll just note the agreement itself came to us yesterday, and it was handed out this morning, and it is properly posted and available.
Unfortunately, I just this second got it. Can I have like 30,
Sure.
30 seconds?
Go ahead.
Like the same.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Manager Wegman, ready?
I got just, yes, go ahead. I'll be done before you get done speak, anybody speak.
Okay, well, we've had a motion and a second. Any further discussion on this issue? Any questions for Tom? Hearing none. We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Long Lake Sediment Basin? Kyle?
You, Madam President, members of the board.
President Priner.
Similar
Oh,
Similar
wait a
line
minute.
of thought here.
Kyle?
Wait a minute,
Yes.
Kyle. I
Um,
skipped one here. Power, Lake
Would have
Comfort.
been, Rice. The next item on the agenda is Rice
Rice
Creek
Creek
Watershed
and
District.
Comfort Lake.
Yes, thank
Okay.
you.
Page 57.
Yes, President Priner, Board of Managers, this item relates to a project that lies in both the Rice Creek Watershed District and the Comfort Lake, Forest Lake Watershed District. I don't know how to pronounce it. I believe it's Tights Farm. This is 3 parcels that are going to be subdivided, rearranged into 4 parcels, result in 4 single-family homes. The applicant would like to have only one regulating agency, and we see the benefit in deferring to Comfort Lake, Forest Lake. Majority of the project is within their watershed district, and they are also requiring, per their rules, stormwater management and upland buffer, which we would not have. So this agreement is to showed that authority, Comfort Lake Forest Lake has the authority to take action on the entirety of the project, and then also oversee future maintenance of those stormwater facilities and buffer features. And this is a joint powers agreement that is to be signed by the landowner in both watershed districts. And since the packet has been created, the applicant has signed the document, and we have it available today.
Okay, thanks, Patrick. Questions for Patrick? Now I'll entertain a motion first.
Madam President, I'll move to authorize the board president enter into a joint powers agreement with the landowner / applicant and Comfort Lake Forest Lake Watershed District and related to the Tice Farm project.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, now we're down to Long Lake.
Madam President, Board of Managers, apologize for that false start.
That's all right, it was me.
For your consideration today, we have an access agreement with Ramsey County to utilize some of the Rice Creek Regional Park property for execution of our Long Lake Sediment Basin cleanout, which is scheduled for this summer. As you know, we're looking to perform a hydraulic dredging of that sediment basin later this year. And our access agreement with Ramsey County that we had in place for the last cleanout in 2013 expired shortly thereafter. So we had worked with county staff to develop a new access agreement, and we were successful in negotiating a 20-year term on this access agreement. So this should hopefully cover not only this cleanout, but any other potential cleanouts that would be required over the next 20 years. So that's a similar term to the agreement we received from them for our carp operation there, carp management. Again, the main burden with this agreement is just that there's a potential, chance that we could damage the property. There's since we last were in there cleaning it out, there has been a new paved pedestrian trail added to the property. We're trying to avoid as much impact to that as we can by launching the dredge barge directly into Rice Creek off of Poppy Seed Drive. Again, staff recommends that the Board of Managers approve this access agreement with Ramsey County. It's inside your packet beginning on page 63 for review. And we expect that the Ramsey County Board will take this up for consideration in April.
Okay, we have a motion. Page 62.
Go ahead.
Madam Chair, I move to authorize the administrator on advice of council with any non-material changes to enter into a 20-year access agreement with Ramsey County to conduct dredging at the Long Lake Sediment Basin.
Second?
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? Any further discussion?
Well, Madam President,
questions?
this is something I'd like to see you turn over to Ramsey County, the cost and maintenance of this entire sediment pond permanently.
Any other comments, questions? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, we have Nick. We're on page
Yes.
72 of our packet.
Yes, President Priner, Board of Managers, today we have before you the manager per diem policy that you've been working on at a number of workshops for your consideration and adoption. Like you said, it's on page 72 of the packet.
Madam President, once again, had read it, didn't find anything I wanted to change, so I would move approval of the manager per diem policy as we've worked on at least 2 prior workshops.
Need a second?
Second?
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion?
Madam President, I'll be voting against this policy. It's, in my opinion, unnecessary. I think the original reasoning brought to this was there was a need for qualifying a claim structure, and I think we had that already in existence. We have statute authority for the per diem. That was then the per diems had to be submitted no later than the end of January of the following year that the per diem is in. We have a mileage authority, we have an expense authority, and these were to be approved by the board. We used to have them published in the check register by individual manager's name, and at that time, if there was any question about claims as to whether they were correct or not, they could be, as any bill is presented to the board, removed from the check register and discussed at that time. And then upon approval, then the administrator would attach a signature, or the treasurer, before we didn't have an administrator, and submit the claim for payment. And so to me, that was the process, and it worked very, very well. And I see this current one had so many qualifications in it, I'm beginning to wonder if really the purpose of this is more about controlling speech by minority managers rather than just a simple structure to pay the per diems. And there's no structure here about the mileage or expenses. And after examining the monies that were paid out last year, just the totals from each manager, I didn't find that there was anything that was unusual or uncommon. And so to me, this is an unnecessary regulation.
Okay, and I'd like to say it has nothing to do with restricting speech. And the main reason is to get our procedures more concise and in order, so when the public look at them, they know how we are compensated for our duties.
And Madam President, I find it, as I worked on it, helpful to inform ourselves on what we are expecting, such as getting education and talking to the public and going to public hearings. And so I don't find it restrictive. I found it helpful.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
No.
Okay. Check register.
Madam President, I move to approve the check register dated March 23rd, 2022 in the amount of $214,955.21 prepared by Red Path and Company.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Items for discussion, staff reports. Anybody have any questions of staff? Engineers here. Anybody have any questions? Okay, we'll go to the April calendar.
Well, Mounds View is looking forward to hosting us.
Oh, good. It'll be fun to be there. Okay, everybody sees the calendar and we're fine. Administrator updates. Next.
Yes, President Preiner, Board of Managers. I'll make note of our city-county partner meeting this afternoon at 1 o'clock. It is a virtual event. I'd like to share with you that the district was awarded the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency planning grant for stormwater and community resilience in the amount of $76,800 odd. And this is based in part on our floodplain mapping and community risk in regards to flooding. The amount is a little bit lower than where we had started in our application by about $20-some odd thousand, but we do have funds available. Flooding grants are not all that common or available, so staff will be recommending and bringing it back to the board for approval. So happy about that. I'd like to share with you that staff is applying the district's natural channel policy as concerns about beavers continue on Rice Creek in various areas. As you know, the district is not animal control, if you will. We do work with our partners to point out these types of things. The district does become involved when any type of blockage would cause significant erosion in the system, so a water quality issue or flooding on the system. Also, just to note, as I'm sure you saw in your communications, we have a violation in the Delwood area with DCB Homes, and staff is exploring the cost benefit and our options for enforcement there.
Any questions for the administrator?
I'm glad you pointed out again that it was Zoom, because I was assuming it was going to be like today's. So I was going to drive over here for, and assume other people would, and I pull out by golly, it is Zoom.
There we go.
Zoom
Yes.
all the way.
It's a shifting landscape.
Yeah, there you go.
Do we have any idea how many will be attending? Any response?
I see Beth is online with us, but I'm quite certain that she's seeing good response to the MailChimp or the social items that we send out. Beth?
Yeah, we've had, we do not ask for RSVPs. We provide the Zoom through the invitation. It's also provided through the public notice, but we can track kind of the metrics of who's opening and who's looking at the invitation, what links they're clicking, and we have a good number of people that receive the invitation, opening and clicking through. So the proof will be in the pudding today at 1 o'clock when we see who is actually in attendance.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? We'll go to the manager's update. Manager Waller.
Well, thank you, Madam President. I attended the MOD meeting on, was it last Wednesday and Thursday? And as I have, and I had the pleasure to attend the executive session as an observer, as I've done in many years before, and it's nice to be back in person to see them all and to listen to the different issues. Manager Wynett did a wonderful job in presentation, and was very nice. And I was listening to some of the conversation there, and I think that board has changed in the 2 years that we've been absent from the public meetings. It's first the membership, and of course the discussion issues. And there seems to be an element that's far more aggressive than I remember the past board being. And in this case, it had to do with the authority issue, of arguing over whether they had rulemaking authority or not. And then the other issue was that one of the non-metro watersheds had removed themselves from the board, and their president was not in agreement. He was the minority member of the 5, and he was there asking for reinstatement, of course, I think as an individual more than as a board. But it was interesting to see, listen to that also. And then later in the day was the presentation by Executive Director Jaski about where the money is available. And I think Manager Bradley and Wynett and myself, we were at least enlightened as to possibilities for more dollars. I asked Jaski how he was going to make certain those federal dollars he claimed were coming were not going to be, as they were, if you remember years ago, they got lost at the state. They never quite made it down this far. And I was not the only one. One of the managers from the outside the metro area specifically was asking about money for maintenance, not just new projects. And that is a very, very sharp question. So I think we left the room thinking that there are other possibilities. By the way, Jaski wasn't the only one offering funding. There were other presenters there that said that these were available. And then I did attend the evening dinner or such. I sat with Bob Detmer. Of course, he's retiring now this year. And Tom Peterson, the Agriculture Commissioner, came by, and Representative Torgelson, which maybe many of you don't know, but he's from the Minnesota River Valley area, and he's been very, very influential. I think you'll recall a few years ago when we went on the bus tour, and we were talking about getting lined up for the dollars for the Ramsey County 2. He was one of the representatives that came there, so that was good to see him there. The next morning I went to the breakfast and nobody was there except members of the boards and such. And so I think we're at a disadvantage from when we used to be up at the hotel. And I realize that hotel is closed now, it's not available. But having the breakfast, we used to have literally 75 or 100 people come to it, not just managers, but I can remember seeing as many as 30. And even when we had the breakfast at the hotel that's across the freeway there, I think they call it the Drury now, and it was called Embassy Suites or something. We had a number of them come to that. But since they went downtown, apparently no one wants to ride the trolley from the Capitol. So, but other than that, Madam President, I don't have any other thing. It's I hope we can find a way to get that up closer to the Capitol itself and their offices, so that it's within walking distance.
Thank you, Manager Waller. You covered a number of items, and I'll let Manager Bradley talk about carp. But before we do that, I see Matt Cochin is actually online, and Greg and I took a walk on Sunday, and there was a car parked on the walking trail on Wet Rice Creek, and of course, the way I tend to do things, I went up to it as in, oh, what are we doing here? And it happened to be Dr. Singh, who was doing, I think, Matt, it's called the Stream Bank Crossing Survey with his students, and had a delightful chat with him, and just missed Matt by a few minutes. So I defer to Matt on this one, just as an update of what they were doing and the information that we use from the University of Minnesota as we look at the good work of Rice Creek and the impacts that it does have on Rice Creek. Sorry to miss you.
Sure. Madam President, Manager Winan, that was the U of M class, Field Methods in Hydrology and Water Quality. We've collaborated with that class a bit in the past, and we are again this year, so we've provided the class with some options, basically just some written ideas for them to get out in the field, collect some data, and hopefully learn something. One of those potential projects that they took us up on was collecting survey data on Middle Rice Creek. So I was out there earlier on Sunday helping them get set up. And as you said, then we were working with Dr. Uday Singh, who I think is more formally associated with the class at the U of M. But I think they did a pretty good job with the data collection. I think it'll have some value to us. So it was a good two-way project in that way. I think we both benefited.
Yeah, good to see our projects in action. So,
yeah, for sure.
Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Manager Bradley.
So as Manager Winan and Manager Waller indicated, that there were two large presentations on access to money. One was clean water funds that we're used to. And of course, I assumed I had brought my notes. I did not bring my notes, but there was a gentleman who spoke about amount of money that rolled my eyes. It was so beautiful. It was for improving habitat. And they fund such things as burns to control quality of grasses. And I'm thinking, seems to me we do that about every other year. And that they help fund that sort of thing. And I started thinking about our CARP program and some of the things we do, and whether or not those would qualify for support either under the Clean Water Fund or this habitat improvement, to the extent that controlling carp improves the habitat for other fish, and that we may have a source for additional funding.
Good.
So.
Madam President, just to add on Manager Bradley's observations, I did have a chat with that fellow afterwards. I'm sure you did too, Mike, but I asked him about maintenance, for example, not just new projects again. And he said, it's all in how you word it. So I have a lot of faith in this staff because they've really been
Fine
good at
words.
wording things before. And in fact, they proved that today by announcing a $76,800 grant they just received. So the point being is that it's not just new projects, there's also, he said, maintenance to it.
And just
you.
to clarify, this is still in the money from the legacy amendment. It goes to it's on the Lessard Sands side of the equation. Yeah.
Manager Wagaman.
I have nothing. You guys have covered everything pretty good.
Okay, and all I want to say is I apologize for not making it down there. It just didn't work out for my schedule. But I would like to say that we know that Representative Detmer will be moving on, and I would think that we should, and maybe Beth can think about a nice letter from the board. You know, he's done a lot of work for us, and he's been more than willing to listen to us, and like he told me, he's learned more about watersheds than he ever cared to know. So, I think we should do something for him, at least a nice letter, and thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. So with that, I have nothing more. I need a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
A second.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
So what, how I feel about not being able to go after I plan on going, so how?
Wait a minute.